Hi, I'm Erica Rivera, and welcome to the Erica Rivera Podcast. This is a new episode, a new guest, and new perspective that we'll be talking about today. And my guest today is Legacy Patino.
Hello.
Welcome. Thank you for being on the show. And I want to talk about, we have a lot to talk about today, right?
Yes, we do.
So exciting stuff and tons more to come. So I definitely want to just dive into it.
Of course. Well, I think a great place to start is a little bit of my background and some of the things that I've done. I feel like a big place or a big posture of mine has always been team building. And I even got a tattoo that says king, because a king always watches for their entire kingdom. It's not just the individual, and rarely is it about them. And I think that is what really helped catapult my success in the areas and the industries that I've been. Is I didn't go into the industry thinking about how can I benefit? How can I get rich? How can I win? I started looking at other people that I genuinely wanted to win, and I figured out how to position them to where we would both benefit, but my focus was always about helping them win. Okay. And that to me was the secret. That was a secret that I learned, and it made it so much easier doing business, working with partnerships, working with other people. It's not about you. Sure. You know, normally you end up getting a reflection of what you're pouring in.
Right.
So it was pretty easy to see once you start seeing those results.
Yeah, and those are great qualities to have if you're, when you're a leader, right? That's what makes you a great leader. So I want to know, and I would like to know, and I'm sure a lot of people would like to know how you got into this. So let's backtrack a little bit and talk about, who you are and what got you into the industry and becoming, what it took, what drove you, to becoming a successful entrepreneur. So tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah, well, it's funny. I think the first thing that comes to mind, I had just turned 21, and I wanted to throw a concert because I did music, and I'm like, well, I already asked all the clubs, I already asked everybody, and everybody said no, so I'm going to throw a concert. And when I started sharing my idea with a bunch of people, everybody's like, no, dude, don't do a party, don't do this, it's going to get raided. But I did it anyway. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to just do it. I made a flyer. I made a bunch of flyers. And long story short is I ended up successfully doing the concert. I was 21. Okay. I had a stage out in the middle of the desert, generators, a DJ. I had races during the day, like off-road races. And I had about like 2,500 people that showed up. And all the people that told me not to do it were there. And they were like, dude, this is unbelievable. And what that did to me was it showed me what I could do. It was like, man, how many times have I allowed someone else's projection to stop me from taking action on something that I want to do? And I think that was the catapult for me. After that, I remember waking up in the morning and I'm like, I want to be rich. Like, that's the next step, like, what do I have to do? And I started Googling and YouTubing how to get rich. And that's when I started coming across all these different podcasts, all these different influencers, Brad Lee, Grant Cardone, and they had courses. So I really dove into learning. Another thing that I've learned, that anytime I feel stuck in life, it's always a lack of information. If I feel stuck, if I can't make a decision, confused minds don't make decisions. So I've gotten into the impulse of always seeking new information, because that's really what did it for me. After that event, that was reassurance for me. And then once I started learning more about it, I understood what took place. Tony Robbins has a story about an elephant. And as the elephant is a child or a baby or whatever you call it, they tie a rope around its neck and they put a stake on the floor. And it tries and tries and tries to break free, but it can't. And then after a certain period of time, it just gives up and never tries again because it believes that it can't. And then once it grows up to be a 13,000-pound elephant, it doesn't even try, even though it'd just take a step and break that. But it it has that belief system instilled. And I think that's what keeps a lot of people from moving forward.
Sure, absolutely. Mindset is everything, especially when you're trying to create something, or do something with your life in any sense. But yeah, absolutely. Especially when it comes to starting businesses, or creating, an additional form of revenue, or even just making a small decision like which, is it a money market account or a CD account that's going to make me more money? You have to be well informed. You have to know which direction you need to go in order to, build or grow in any sense. So, but yeah, absolutely. Mindset is everything. And once you have that right mindset and you learn about what it is that you want to pursue or build or create, then you can, of course, there's trial by error, or error by trial, and you will always, unless I feel I'm a firm believer that you are going to make mistakes, right, along the way, but it's up to you if you're going to learn from them and either learn from them and grow, or just continue to make the same mistakes, right? So once you decide to learn and grow from them, then that's going to set you to the next level. A successful business owner or entrepreneur has not become has not been at that level without failure.
Right.
I have failed in business. I have failed in many things, but I have to learn from them. I have to learn from my mistakes in order for me to grow and become a better person, become a better partner, become a better mother, and a better business owner. Right. So yeah, absolutely. That's great.
I think, the failure to me it's a sign of progress because you tried. I've probably failed more than anyone that I know in so many different things, to the point where, a lot of people were like, oh, here we go again. Here's another thing or another thing. What happened to the other 10 failures? And that was another thing that was really hard. Trying to become better, trying to progress, but not having support systems, not having, those people. And it's okay. Like, you just have to learn that it's a lonely road. Sure. Not many people are going to take it. And failing is not a bad thing. Most people have a terrible relationship with failure. Like, you go to the gym to reach failure. You go into business to reach failure, to see what your capacity is, so the next time you can increase that failure. You can prolong that failure. And then until one day you take flight and you no longer fail the same way. You've built those parameters. You've built safety mechanisms. You understand that through experience. And you can learn a lot of this. And me, I'm very stubborn. I heard and learned a lot of the things that I ended up going and making the mistakes that could have been prevented if I just listened to the advice. But sometimes you just have to go through that experience to fully understand that, to fully digest the information and see like, oh, my dad was right. Oh, this guy was right, So I think that, to me, when I see people failing, it's just a sign that they're trying, that they're attempting. There's never been a success story where they didn't have multiple failures before they reached that peak. Even Michael Jordan didn't even make the team in the first few attempts. Right. So.
No, I agree 1,000%. And you mentioned earlier, failure, it's a lonely road. When you're building a business, when you're working towards a goal, when you believe in yourself, but what's tough is when no one else believes in you. And it can be very discouraging, disheartening to take this road alone. And I think the biggest thing that most people feel, or a lot of people feel, that they should have that support system. They should not be on this road alone. But believe it or not, most of us have been on this road by ourselves at one point or another. And that's the only way that I feel will bring clarity and understanding as to what we really want to do. Now, people will join you on this road along the way, and that's great. But yeah, and eventually you will have that support system. And of course, you reach the top, and all of a sudden, you have a million people there at the top with you. But it's those who were there from the beginning, or when you've hit rock bottom, that will be the ones to support you, always be there for you.
Right.
Those are your people. So it's important to understand that it's okay to be on this road by yourself. Right. It's just you have to accept it at one point. Now, let's talk about overcoming failure. Tell me about a time that you failed and how you overcame that, and what led you to reach the top.
Man, I've had a lot. I've had a lot of big failures. I think that's something that plays to my advantage. Is I've never been afraid of the judgment, or I've never been afraid of people thinking different of me. Because I failed, I reached a point where it just didn't matter anymore. I knew it was part of the process. I think one of the biggest failures was one of my first companies that I started here in town. It was called Autopilot. It was a delivery company. It was before Uber Eats and DoorDash. It was like my own little invention. I felt so like a lot of people thought it was an app and that it was nationwide. It was a great experience. That business ended up growing. I ended up getting different accounts for delivery. Like I delivered all the parts for Napa Auto Parts. I was delivering medicines for, pharmacies. So it got to a good point and I was about to expand. And then my managers ended up getting in a fight and it all ended up crumbling. And it was such a shock. It was such a shock because my business failed. And then now all of a sudden all these people were right. Not to start a business, stay in my job. Like that's the route. And it was tough. And truthfully, that was a really big hit for me because I didn't really understand, or I hadn't really tasted real success yet. I was still very primitive in my process. I just reached some kind of level of success compared to like my job. And I remember in that process, something had happened with the owner financing in the house that we were living in, and the guy wasn't making payments. So then my house was getting foreclosed at the same time. Right. So for me, that was a big failure because I didn't set parameters. I didn't set barriers. I didn't have a backup to my backup to my backup. I just kind of grew with what was happening around me. As my income grew, so did my debt. I didn't know how to measure that. Yeah. And it took a lot of me swallowing my pride and ego and everything to get a job after that, but I knew it needed to be strategic. And I started reaching out to those sales influencers because I'm like, if I can get around them, then there's a hack. They have all the attention. If I impress that one person has a lot of people. And I ended up working for him. His name was Brad Lee. And I was his salesman in his sales floor for about 3 months. I outsold the entire sales team. I would show up at 4 a.m. and I would start calling East Coast. I would stay until like 8, 9 p.m. calling Hawaii, Australia. So I made sure that I was the obvious choice. Because in anything, it's like if you want to be picked, you have to be the obvious choice. Make it no question that someone needs to pay attention to you. Sure. And it worked. Yeah. I didn't want to be an employee. I was the owner of my own company. But I knew it was just, I needed to learn more. Yeah. And I humbled myself enough to be like, okay, I'm going to go learn from an actual multimillionaire. I'm going to learn from someone that already accomplished it. And that was, to me, the journey that changed everything. Right. Because 3 months after that, he promoted me. Then I was running his operations. I was traveling backstage with him to all of his events. I got to meet all of these influencers like Jordan Belfort, Patrick Bet-David, all these people that you see on Instagram and stage. I was there. I was his operations guy. I was introduced and edified because I was helping him with so much stuff. So it was never about not failing. It was what was going to be the next step once you hit the floor. Like, what's your next step? Are you going to dwell on this situation? Right. Are you going to start telling the story to everyone? Look at what happened to me. Or am I going to take responsibility and see how I can prevent this from happening again? Right. No, and
And I agree in terms of it just depends on how you choose to handle failure. I know when I started in real estate, I thought, well, okay, I'm going to take it easy, 1 or 2 houses a month and close on 1 or 2 houses. And, it's going to be it's going to be cruise control. And then, COVID happened, rates were low. And I was selling a dozen houses a month. And so I tasted success, right? I got a little taste of that. And, I liked it, right? I liked it, and I thought, okay, I'm gonna do this. I'm good at what I do. And never thought that I would need to be humbled, in my opinion. I feel like I've always been a humble person, but never to the point where I had to step back and think, okay, well, what if this? What if that? I always expect the unexpected, right?
Mm-hmm.
In terms of business. And so then I thought, okay, well, what if this happens? What if that happens? What if I go back to just selling 1 house a month? I'm not set up that way anymore. I have a full-blown business, and and a lot of things can happen. I need to set up different revenue streams. And so I panicked. Thankfully, I haven't experienced in business what I never wish on anyone, which is rock bottom. But I can see if you're not set up properly, it can very easily happen.
Right.
So I started setting up different revenue streams. I purchased investment properties. I set up other things. But but have I experienced failure in business? Absolutely. Absolutely. It's an eye opener. It's an eye opener, and I feel that if you're not if you're not prepared to experience failure, it will crush you.
Right.
It's how you overcome that. And it's like that, like I said, in life, in just in general. Mm-hmm. So it's how you overcome failure and how you choose to handle it that will make or break you, because it will break people. I promise you.
Yeah.
And so it's real. It's real. It's out there. It's how you grow. It just who you associate yourself with, who you are around, and which rooms you walk into will determine which direction you're going to go, I feel. Right. And so I've struggled to find those rooms, and I feel like now I have a really good idea, a very good understanding on who I need to be associating myself with, who I need to be speaking to, who I need to be in business with, who I need to partner up with. And so that's exactly what I feel a lot of people, if you're starting a business, right? If you're in anything, in just, it's who you associate yourself with is who is going to help you grow. Right. So having a good understanding of your circle is extremely important, especially when you're wanting to, have taste success in business.
Yeah, I mean, and even if because now I would say I put a lot of thought into the people that I'm around. I always have a strategy behind the people that are around me. There's a void that they fill. There's a problem that I solve. There's different elements to it. But if you're just starting out and you don't even know where to go or where to, begin, just be around them, because you're going to learn.
Sure.
Like, you might not know what to do or what to say. Just be quiet.
Sure.
Listen and ask questions.
Yeah.
There's one of my cousins has been calling me frequently, asking me different things and what should I do? Like, I want to get into business. I'm like, go to networking events. Go to as many as you can.
Yeah.
Go ask questions and be transparent and be like, I want to get into this space. I want to be a salesman. I want to be an entrepreneur. What do you recommend? Give me some advice. And you're going to meet a lot of good people like that.
Yeah.
Like, that's where you need to be. So I agree that the average of the 5 people you surround yourself for sure always dictates your direction, because they influence you.
Sure.
I mean, if you have someone around you, they have some sort of influence on you.
Right.
And that's scary sometimes. If you've got bad people around you, it'll crush you. It won't allow you to grow. Right. Who you're with matters. It also reflects who you are. So even pay attention. Some people are like blind to the fact of what they look like to everybody else. It's like, well, the people see your circle, they see you.
Right.
So that matters a lot, especially in business. I mean, you've got clients, you've got business partners, you've got vendors, you've got people that are doing business with you. Your image, your posture, your people, all of that matters. And it's not to say to live 2-3 different lives, like you keep this private. It's like find a way to create that balance. Like be authentic with yourself, be authentic with the way that you move, and know what you want to do. Because a lot of people have imposter syndrome, reaching a level of success, preaching a certain thing, and then not abiding by all of the principles. Something that I've heard a lot is practice what you preach. And I always flip it. I'm like, no, preach what you practice and see if you're proud of that.
Right.
Because that'll showcase a lot. What are you doing on a daily basis? And talk about that. And if you don't like it, well, then now you know what you've got to do.
Sure.
You've got a lot of changing to do.
I've been around people in this industry, and I always ask because I'm always striving to grow professionally, right? I want to always learn something new every day, right? And even if I'm not at a networking event or, around colleagues, I always, I'll look up a podcast, or I'll maybe just read a page of a book, which I have some. I just haven't actually opened one in a few weeks, but I always read, articles coming in, things like that, because I want to take something away from today. Right. So, but people that I've been around say the same thing, practice what you preach. Right. But then I ask them, okay, well, what's the latest podcast you recommend, or what can you teach me? What did you learn today that you can show me? And they're like, oh, we haven't heard a podcast in a long time, or I haven't, what's the greatest book, or the best book you've read recently? Oh, I haven't read a book in years. So I understand, and that's a good way to put it, is preach what you practice. Now it works in business, and I feel like if I practice what I preach and preach what I practice in business and in life, I could definitely, we always have room to improvement. We have room for improvement always. And so I think a lot of it has to do with remaining humble, staying humble, and being open to constructive criticism, any advice or any trainings possible. Always attend trainings as well, or be around someone who is someone who can train you and motivate you or drive you, or give you that information that you need to become a business owner.
Right.
So
Fill in those voids for sure. Because a really important thing to have in business is understand your weaknesses, because you replace them with someone else's strength.
Right.
And if you want to be blind to your weaknesses or don't believe you have any, then you're not doing it right. You're going to have holes in your system. And I think that's something that I've always been really good at. A funny story, in high school, I never did any homework, but I got all my homework done. And what I would do is, like, for example, I'd have first period reading class, and then I'd have a friend, and I'd be like, hey, dude, you do homework 1 week, I'll do homework the next week. And he's like, oh, yeah, perfect. And then I find another friend that has that same class in second period, and I tell him the same thing. So then 1 week, one friend's doing it, and I copy, and then let the other friend copy, and I just vice versa. But I was filling a blank. I was solving a problem. And I feel like in that same way, you create win-win situations with everyone, and you can benefit as well. You're just becoming that bridge. And I think I've became that bridge in a lot of industries with a lot of people. Having a way to see those opportunities is like, hey, if I connect this person with this person and they do this, there's a lot that's going to happen, and I feel like
we can create.
And I feel like that's happening with us now, with, the different conversations that we've had, even what we were talking about a little before, creating those movements, because you do have to do a lot of that by yourself, and to find the people that you can share that with. I think that if we give those outlets, like the events that we've talked about, collaborating on, we can give that space, somewhere here in Yuma where people can find that. There's like-minded individuals, because I know there's a lot of people here that want success, that want to achieve something. They just don't know who to talk to,
Right.
and they don't know where to start. They don't know how to do it.
They are definitely not in the right circle, because I also have spoken to many people here, and they're like, well, Yuma, I can't find anyone who is gonna, I can benefit from, or grow with, or you learn something from. But there are a lot of people that, believe it or not, they could already be in your circle. You just haven't had the right conversations, and that will spark that, that interest, and that drive, and that motivation. So, again, and if not, then, start looking around and see who you can, who can be in that circle that you
Right.
want to be in. You mentioned movements.
Mm-hmm.
You want to create a movement or start a movement. What exactly do you see as, or consider, a movement?
Well, the first time that I did it on purpose, because I had done it accidentally before, but I didn't really understand what I was doing. When I got into the sales and recruiting space and business, it made it a lot more clear. The easiest way to start a movement is create an enemy. Create an enemy that a lot of people can get behind. That's always the easiest way. Is if the enemy is poverty, then that's the enemy, and everybody gets behind that movement. If the enemy is change, or the enemy is the standard, or whatever it is, that's always the case. In any amazing epic movie, there's always an enemy. There's always a bad guy and a hero. There's always like a side that you pick. In our nation, in the world, in the country, in everything, there's always a good and bad. There's always a side to pick. You can't really be neutral, because you won't have anybody behind you. So to create a massive movement, you have to create a mission, something that you're after and something that you're trying to defeat. And in a lot of the cases, for example, in the biggest movement I've ever created was in a solar company. And we had about almost 4,000 reps, 17 states. It was massive. But the movement behind that was like, no one's going to be poor here. Like, everyone's got the path to become rich. The enemy is poverty. The enemy is being in jail, or having golden handcuffs, or, being stuck. You don't have freedom. You don't have time. You don't have money. That was the enemy. And we got a lot of people behind it, and we've got a lot of endorsements. And that's another element of a movement, is endorsements. Who is backing that movement? Yeah. So between creating an enemy, having your base of people, and then endorsements, like big endorsements. For us, our endorsement was one of the most influential salesmen on the planet. And he was saying, this is the solar company to do it with. It was like the gold rush. Everyone was calling us to be a part of the team. We weren't even recruiting at that point. We were like interviewing, but we did it in such a way where it was a no-brainer. We had like professional trainers for that industry. We had the basis of those. We had influencers behind it, and then checkpoints. Always have to have checkpoints for the movement. So we always at least did 2 events a year. Like, that way you get everyone again, and you remind them of the movement. Mm-hmm. Like, you have everyone's energy in one space and create that experience, and you remind them why we're here, where we're at, and we're almost there. And then the next event is the same thing. So I think now with, what we've been discussing, and really tying it into the opportunities of real estate, that there's a lot of opportunity, and the majority of millionaires and anybody's wealth has been built in that side. I think that a big movement that we can create, and that it's a huge need, is that support system. Like, creating the movement of a support system where you don't have to think about, how to set yourself up, how to get your taxes done, how to form your LLC, what actions to take to generate revenue, right? A network, you just create that space.
And having that circle, and it goes back to who you associate yourself with, who your network is, because that's going to be your net worth. It's the saying, your network is your net worth.
Right.
So it's important to understand what strengths each of these individuals have. For example, you're phenomenal at the drive, the motivation, and teaching people how to become successful, right? I know the ins and outs of real estate. Real estate is one of the biggest industries and opportunities to build wealth, whether generational wealth or to build a fortune, whatever direction you want to go. And other individuals, such as, other partners we have, accounting, tax experts, how to create those LLCs that you need if you're wanting to become a business owner. So absolutely, it's building that circle that is going to help build your empire. Having that right circle is going to help you build your empire. And in turn, you share that with your other circles, because I'm a firm believer that you have to have different circles for different reasons and purposes. So yeah, absolutely. So I'm excited to do these things that we have planned, and these ventures, and and these events coming up, and excited to build a partnership with you along with others, and help people grow, help people become successful, whether it's, wanting to build a fortune, or just become successful in terms of how they feel, how they, how they grow themselves, or even support their own family, or business partners. So I'm excited for that. I always want to share my knowledge and share what I've learned throughout the years with others, and help them become successful. I have a team, and I've helped them become top producers, and nothing makes me more proud than to see them succeeding, and them being able to say that they were trained well, they were able to at least take away something that helped them become who they are,
right.
In terms of what I've shared with them throughout the years.
Right. And I commend you for that, because before we got more introduced, or formally introduced, or we met in person, I asked around about you. Like a lot of people, I'm like, what do you know about her? Who is she? And everybody had great things to say about you. And then looking into you and seeing what you're about, doing this podcast, opening that channel, like it takes a lot. It takes a lot of time, energy, money, effort. It takes a lot from you. And then you're doing it from a place of helping others. Like that, to me, is like the type of people I want to be around with. That's why all of this is flowing so well, and I commend you for all of it. I'm excited to be sitting here. I'm excited more so throughout the conversations that we've had. It just builds more and more, because it's like, it's not easy to find people that are on the same mission, people that genuinely want to help, people that genuinely want to succeed and better themselves. It's not very common.
No, it's tough. You become complacent when you hit that certain level, and you think, okay, you know what, I'm good. I see myself as successful, and I don't need to learn anything else. I don't need to grow anymore. But no, it's never like that. You always should want to grow and share your experiences and what you can do to help others.
Right.
And thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
I'm just me, and what you see is what you get, and what I share is just nothing. It comes from the heart. When it comes to helping other people, it's going to come from the heart, and you're either going to learn, or you either choose to grow from what we can teach you, or provide, the knowledge that we provide, or you don't,
Yeah.
So I have, in other cases, have had agents who, they don't want to, they want everything handed to them.
Yeah.
They don't want to work for them.
You can lead a horse to water.
Yeah, absolutely. So, but you've done great things, and I'm excited to see what together great minds and like-minded people can do for others. Of course, we want to help people. We want to help them grow and become successful. So, it's just overcoming fear, overcoming that fear that we all have within us, and just not letting that set us back, because I know I've been set back because of fear.
Right.
But I'm excited. I'm excited for what the future holds and see what we can do. I know we're ready to create a movement. So
already
keyword.
started.
Yeah, absolutely. We're
definitely looking forward for anybody listening. We'll have an event coming soon, so you'll definitely be hearing about it.
So any viewers, who are watching, where can they find you? Do you have an Instagram?
At Legacy First Class. That's the handle for TikTok, YouTube.
Legacy First Class. Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. So
definitely reach out. Let's network. If you got any ideas, business, you just want to get in the movement, reach out. Let me know. And
any questions? Yeah, absolutely. Anything in general, I just want to know what, today's rate is, or how's the market, or what can I do to build that motivation and drive. So well, thank you so much, Legacy. I appreciate you talking to me and having this conversation.
I appreciate you having me on.
It won't be the last time that our viewers see us.
Yeah, no,
we promise.
First of many.
So all right, thank you, and take care.